Welcome. It's good to have you here for this webcast. My name is Jonathan Foust. Delighted that you have taken the time to be here. Juicy stuff lies ahead. At least I think it's pretty juicy. Before we launch into our short meditation and this talk, I want to first thank Rita Moran, our mindful movement leader, and also Ray Manioki, who offers mindful dialogue right after this session. The whole Monday night experience, if you're interested, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, you can join Rita for mindful movement to kind of massage you into preparation for meditation and this talk. And afterward, at 8:40, you can join Ray Manioki. This is an opportunity to check in with other people, a facilitated circle about your practice, your observations. It's so important that we find time to connect with like-minded folks. So that's what that's all about. Thank you so much, Ray. The links for those two Zoom sessions are on my Facebook page and on my website. Also, thank you to Glenn Harrison, our producer, and to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this. I have a mailing list if you'd like to sign up for a monthly review, my best photography. All these talks, over 500 talks, are available online, YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, all that good stuff. And finally, thank you for your support. This is all offered freely, so no one is denied access to these practices and teachings. And your support helps me to do this. There's a certain amount of technology, time, all that stuff that goes into it. So thank you for that. Well, hey, I think I just got through the announcements. So let us, without further ado, move into our meditation. The talk that we're going to explore, the theme here is, who are you in the absence of desire? And this is a fascinating way to kind of explore in meditation, because there are aspects of meditation that are about desire, about wholesome desire. You desire to be more present. You desire to be more awake. You desire to be more compassionate. All that good stuff. They're all wholesome desires. But there's also a state of non-desire, where you simply cultivate this capacity to let everything be as it is. And that's an interesting place to look at. So we're going to start with willful practice, and then we're going to move into a kind of a hybrid, and then we'll open into what it means to be simply let everything be as it is. If there's anything I lead that doesn't work for you, my invitation specifically to you is to ignore me and do whatever works for you. So you might want to reach your arms up overhead, stretch up, let out these sounds. Just ask your body how it might like to move. And then as you're ready, you might close your eyes. Closing your eyes facilitates this movement to heighten your attention to the inner world. And you might, to kind of assist this inner focus, explore where you feel this next breath on the inside. Where do you feel it? And could you take some time to let yourself get kind of fascinated by the breath? You can lengthen the breath, draw the breath out. And as you slow down the breath, is it possible to let your attention become kind of absorbed into the sensations of your breathing? Slow and smooth breath is an automatic way of calling your attention inward, and you might also explore letting the breath be smooth. Slow, smooth, and deep. And if you can sustain just 3 breaths where you are continuously aware of the sensations, the in-breath, the pause at the top of the breath, the exhalation, that subtle pause on the out-breath, you might track its effect on your mind. This phase of practice is about consciously and willfully calling your attention back to the experience of here and now. The breath is a handy tool for this. But let's take a little time to sense if we can enhance this experience of here and now. And we'll do this by consciously contracting and then relaxing. If you like, you might bring your hands into fists. Tighten up the forearms, the biceps, the triceps, the muscles around the shoulder blades, the muscles around the shoulders. Inhale and hold your breath. Hold and squeeze. And then relax. Just track the sensations of softening and letting go on the inside, down through the arms and down into the palms. If you'd like to take it a step further, bring your hands in the fists, tighten up the forearms and the biceps and the triceps and the muscles around the shoulders and the muscles around the shoulder blades, and now draw your shoulders up toward your ears so your neck disappears. Taking a long, deep inhalation. Only if it's comfortable for you, hold the breath and squeeze. Where do you feel the contraction right now? And now as you release, relax the breath, drop the shoulders, and let your attention flow again down the arms. Down through the elbows, down through the forearms, into the wrists, into the palms. Feeling the backs of the hands. One final contraction, if you're up for it. If you like, bring your hands into fists, tighten up your forearms, your biceps, your triceps, muscles around the shoulders, muscles around the shoulder blades. Draw the shoulders up toward the ears, and now pull all the muscles of your face up toward your nose. Turn your face into a raisin and hold the breath. And relax. Relax the shoulders down. Relax the muscles of the face. And again, sense down the length and the volume of the arms. Down through the elbows. Down through the wrists. Sensing from the inside the palms, the thumbs, the fingers, backs of the hands. Is it possible to relax your hands even more, softening on the inside? Could you relax the muscles of your face? The tongue, letting your tongue relax and fill your lower jaw. Is there anything on the inside right now that could relax or soften or let go right now? Is there anything that could relax or soften or let go even more right now? And from this place of relaxation, of feeling soft on the inside, you might again revisit your experience of your breathing. Where do you feel the breath the most predominant right now? And you might, for these next few minutes, let the experience of your breath be your doorway, or your portal back into right now, right here presence. Alternatively, you might use the sound vibrations or maybe the feeling in the palms of the hands, but the practice is simply to notice when your mind is far away, how compassionately you can escort it back to this point of focus in the here and now, to relax and to soften and to receive the moment right here. And you might notice that there is a quality of willful arriving, but there's also an element here of what we could call open monitoring. You're aware of the foreground of your breath or sound, and you're also aware of what's changing, of the sounds, of thoughts, moods, different states coming and going. And here you might explore from time to time these questions. What exactly is happening right now? Can I let it be? There is an element in this practice of doing, of focus, of willful practice of calling your attention back. There's a quality of this practice where you become more aware of flow, of what's changing and your capacity to let it be. And there's a third quality of practice, which is the practice of allowing. Whatever is happening, to simply say yes to it. And you might explore the following question. In the absence of desire, in the absence of wanting your experience to be any different than how it is, what do you notice? What do you feel? Notice the quality of presence right now. Sensing your capacity to focus on purpose, your capacity to open to what is, and your capacity to let everything be. You might now begin to deepen your breath. Let your body begin to move in any way that feels really good for you. And then taking all the time you need, let yourself begin your transition. Welcome back. There's a story that I heard of an interview with John D. Rockefeller, who at that time was the richest man on the planet. And he was asked, how much is enough? When do you know you have enough money? How much is enough? He thought about it for a while and he said, just a little bit more. That pretty much sums up the human mind. What I'd like to talk about, and we've been exploring this series of what is enlightenment, what is wakefulness, and we've been exploring in terms of what it isn't. Without conditioning. Who are you without conditioning? Who are you without hatred or judgment or ill will? Who are you without confusion or delusion? I'd like to talk a little bit about who you are in the absence of wanting, who you are in the absence of desire. Greed, hatred, and desire are considered the three poisons of the mind. When any one of these is operative, it's impossible to be fully awake and fully present. So it's been a fascinating process for me to explore, okay, so then without desire, without ignorance, without hatred, what is there? What am I? So we're going to explore here the nature of wanting, some of the strategies for working with the wanting mind, and a little bit here on in the absence of wanting, there is naturally this arising of contentment, an arising of happiness. And finally, I'd like to talk about non-desire and what we could call enlightenment. So as you may know, I've been referring in the last number of months about the fact we got a puppy, cute little puppy. And we were showing the puppy to Tara's grandkids on FaceTime. And so, boom, they're on the screen. And here I'm holding this cute little puppy. And almost immediately, the younger one reached out toward the camera and said, I want one of those. A pure expression of the human mind. That's us. We want. The mind wants more and more and more in ever-increasing quantities forever and ever. The essential nature of mind. And if you just imagine, like if you were like to reach out as if you're trying to grasp something and you really feel that, you can even try it right now. Just reaching out to grab something, you can feel the tension. You can feel the stress that there is in wanting. It's that grasping quality of mind. On the one hand, grasping, wanting, desire, it's moving toward life. It's moving toward expression. The experience of pleasure draws us to engage into life. The experience of pleasure draws us to procreate and keep the species going. The desire for pleasure kind of guides us forward. You could say it's life-loving life. It's a big yes to moving forward and experiencing and engaging. But on the other hand, desire can be a terrible master. You might find yourselves at times driven by unceasing desire. We are run by wanting. You might find yourself chronically avoiding pain by taking false refuge in the next thing that's going to make you feel better. We are more and more and more an addicted culture. That is to say, we are pursuing pleasure at a great cost now, and all of us experience to some degree the metaphor of the hungry ghost. The hungry ghost are these these entities that have big bellies, long necks, and tiny little mouths. And the hungry ghosts are constantly hungry, and they can't get enough into their mouth and neck to satisfy them. And when you experience the hungry ghost, you know what it's like to feel that unquenched desire. The word tanha in Pali means thirst. So we are driven by this thirst, and there are qualities of thirst that have wholesome qualities and qualities of thirst that are not so wholesome. And what we're exploring here is, what does it mean to quench that thirst? What happens when thirst is quenched? I love coffee. I love the flavor of coffee. I love the aroma of coffee. I love the warmth of coffee. In the summer, I love the coldness of iced coffee. I love the kick I get when I drink coffee. There's an element of coffee that is really, really enjoyable and really wholesome. It's a mood enhancer. I think faster. I think better. I like how it feels. So you could say it's kind of a harmless, wholesome expression. But what I notice is I kind of get into this system of more is better. And I slowly start creeping up my dosage. And I start building up a little toxicity in my system. My sleep gets affected. I'm a little bit more irritable. I don't get quite the kick I got from the coffee before, so I might have a second. And the question is, am I condemned to perpetually amp up my nervous system until I have a permanent tic and I can't sleep? No. I actually have a choice. Now, usually, when I choose to turn down my coffee consumption is because the suffering has gotten so extreme that I need to take action. But I do have a choice. Now, it's important to say some would agree I don't have a choice. That's a separate Dharma talk. But for now, let's say I do. Let's say I recognize the unsatisfactoriness of my caffeine addiction and the toxicity in my system. I recognize it. I pause. I turn toward it. I explore solutions. And then I might, and I have multiple times in my life, I choose short-term suffering for long-term ease. That is to say, I start cutting back. And normally what happens is I cut back. I'm better and better at cutting it back gradually so I don't suffer the headaches and so forth. And then I bring myself back to a nice, comfortable dosage again. So where we do have, that's a mild example. So many of us have profound connections to desire that lead to very, very strong addiction. I don't mean to minimize that. We are driven by wants and needs. And from what I can tell, much of my suffering is a want or need that's not being satisfied. If I'm upset, there's something I'm wanting that's not happening. So the question is, what can you do about it? And what are the strategies? I think it's safe to say that humankind has struggled with our relationship with desire for a long, long time. So one strategy is, what about denial of desire? Just burn off the desire, burn off the wanting mind. I've always joked that when I was 7, I had my needs surgically removed. That's a joke, but I chose not to acknowledge my needs because of the pain of disappointment. I got more self-sufficient, trying to burn off the need for support, for attention, for love. Not a great balance. But so many spiritual traditions all around the planet from time immemorial have addressed this denial of desire. All cultures deny the fleshly desires, the poverty vows, the chastity vows, the hair shirts, austerities, all meant to overcome and burn those desires out of you. To some degree, their effectiveness can be very profound. I think it's safe to say there's a shadow side to that. So that's one strategy. Deny your wants. Another strategy is just give in to the desire and trust that everything's going to work out. So just go into it. Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, in his ashram, he elected this strategy. He would say that the only way to go beyond your senses is through the senses. So if you just indulge the senses, eventually you'll find that sense desire is not satisfying. There's a great story he told of one of his disciples who was struggling with his addiction to cigarettes, to smoking tobacco. And what Rajneesh says is, what I want you to do is take up smoking as a spiritual practice. I want you to increase the amount that you're smoking, and I want you to have this as your meditation. And actually, what this guy started to describe was when he wasn't feeling guilty about it, but actually really exploring and turning toward it, he started to see that it was inherently dissatisfying, that the cravings were actually very, very unpleasant, and that the experience of taking in the smoke and holding the smoke, he started to develop an aversion toward it. So that's just one example of blow through the senses, indulge yourself, and eventually you're going to find that that's not satisfying, that the temporary pleasure is actually filled with dissatisfaction and suffering. So that strategy may have worked for some, but I think it's safe to say there are lots of casualties along the way. Addiction, STDs, serious confusion. So surrendering to desire and just going with the flow and seeing how it works out, it's got its pluses and minuses. Another strategy might be exploring how to moderate desire, the middle way. That might hold some promise. Just to notice when you feel the urge of desire and want, to slow down, to look carefully at it, to really experiment and investigate. I think there is some merit there. Again, desire is baked in. And many traditions speak of how it's actually desire that sets the whole show in motion. The whole karmic wheel, if you will. The whole wheel of cause and effect is initiated through desire. And this process of becoming. You're becoming the next thing. And you're leaning in. The desire is taking you to the next level. I'd mentioned this before, but when I used to go to these whole health conferences or whatever, there would always be a stand, or the Hare Krishnas would have a stand, and they had this very interesting kind of the wheel of karma display. And there were these little figures, and they would have it all their presentations. It was very graphic, and it was in a circle, and they have these little figures. The first was the figure of a crying baby. The next figure was a crawling baby. The next figure was a toddler. The next figure was a young boy. The next figure was a man in his prime, a warrior. The next figure in this circle was an aging man. The next figure was a man bent over and old. The next figure was a man at his death. And then right into the crying baby. And according to this particular model, it's demonstrating the cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth. And whether you believe in reincarnation or not, it says something about this idea that desire and becoming, it sets this wheel of karma in motion. Karma is a very interesting thing to reflect on, cause and effect. Here's a cool definition from Yogananda. He said, before you act, you have freedom. But after you act, the effect of that action will follow you whether you want it to or not. This is the law of karma. So every action has an after effect that follows you. And when your actions are based on desire, on wanting, you are setting in motion a whole karmic wheel. So getting off the wheel of karma is the quenching of that wanting, desire, becoming. So let's do a little Zen pop quiz. If you like, you can close your eyes. Just take 3 slow breaths. And you might think of just something that recently you've been wanting. You may be eyeballing a little bit. It might be a thing, it might be a relationship, it might be an emotion, it might be an event. And over the next 3 breaths, just let your attention settle on something that you've been wanting. If you can't think of anything, you can make something up. Just something that looks desirable. When you have that in mind, let's take a few moments to reflect on that inner experience of wanting. What does it feel like inside to want? Can you kind of locate that feeling of desire? Is there a sense of like leaning toward or maybe grasping? And you might take a moment to kind of just sort of exaggerate that quality of wanting. And maybe if you like, you can bring that feeling up and put it on as an expression on your face, just to say hello to it. And now you might explore the following question. Who are you in the absence of desire? In the absence of wanting, what does that feel like inside? What do you notice? You might deepen your breath. If you like, you can open your eyes if they're not open already. I personally find this question really, really helpful, and it's one that I bring into my own meditation. Who am I in the absence of desire? Sometimes it will help me to sort of sustain a sense of just open awareness. Sometimes it's just a glimpse. But there are some strategies for working with the wanting mind. One of the classic ones is cultivating mindfulness, cultivating non-judging awareness, and along with that, labeling thoughts. So when you're practicing self-observation without judgment, and you notice the mind wanting, you just simply give it a name, wanting. There's wanting. Or maybe desire, or maybe the word craving. Now, what happens sometimes is just by naming it, you liberate it. Sometimes not. But it helps you to recognize and see it for what it is. Just to see wanting. Another thing you can do is to really investigate the wanting. Like, okay, so here's a state of desire. What does that feel like inside? What happens if I just hold this with some acceptance, some non-judging awareness? What happens when I simply acknowledge it? Neither indulging nor denying, but just to notice this is what the mind does. Another level of investigation is to explore, is this what I really, really want? Do I really want this? I find this is maybe a fine point, but it's something I come back to again and again for myself, is this distinction between form and essence. If there's something I find my mind wanting, I'm usually focused on the form. I really want that cup of coffee. The essence is the experience. Oh, what I'm really wanting is kind of a time out, a sense of getting recharged, a sense of renewal. So mindfulness, labeling thoughts, investigating, bringing kind of acceptance to it can be really helpful. Another classic way of working with desire is reflecting on impermanence. It can be simply noticing how desire fades, how you can want something and then the mind becomes distracted. As Ramana Maharshi said, the mind is like a drunken monkey stung by scorpions. It wants this, it wants this, it wants this. You can reflect on things you've wanted and how eventually you lost interest in them. How the joy passes pretty quickly. I had an experience so many years ago, back when I was doing like intensive practice in spiritual community, where I was absolutely fixated on one of the sisters in the ashram. And I could not remove her from my mind. I just kept coming back and kind of, just fantasizing, obsessive thinking. This was in my celibacy days, so I'm particularly charged. At one point in my meditation, I just thought, okay, I've tried tossing this out. I've tried everything. I'm just going to give myself into it. And so I was in meditation. And then I had this wild experience. Suddenly, I had this image of her sitting across from me, and then this big smile came on her face, and then the smile continued, and then she became a skull and skeleton. I thought, wow, that's impermanence. So that was spontaneous. I was not making that one up. So these strategies for turning attention toward the wanting mind itself can be really helpful. Our entire nervous system is built on desire and built on rewards. And I don't need to tell you that the manipulation around desire right now maybe more than ever, is quite amazing to behold. Very, very smart people have learned around this dopamine reward structure and have learned how to manipulate human nature. Online endless scrolling, how hours disappear, how lives disappear into gaming and online and everything that's out there. So I really feel now more than ever, it's so helpful to investigate this phenomena of desire, because I don't want to be manipulated. I don't know about you. But let's just say, even in the face of incredibly sophisticated manipulation in our culture, you start to cultivate more freedom from inner desire. What is that like? Quite often we tend to fixate on the problem. We focus on what's not working. But it's very interesting to actually pay attention to the experience of non-desire. Again, way back when, in my spiritual community days, we were studying the yamas and niyamas in the yogic system, the observances and restraints, part of the kind of the ethical riverbanks of practice. And this study group was inviting us to choose one thing to focus on. As someone who's eternally restless, a ladder climber, ambitious, I chose what's called santosh in that tradition. And santosh means contentment. When you are practicing santosh, you're basically saying, this moment is enough. I'm grateful for this moment. There's nothing to add, there's nothing to take away from now. That's an ultimate truth, perhaps. But what I noticed was the opposite. When I really tried to practice this moment is enough, I began to notice how every moment my mind was either wanting something or pushing something away or bored. As we bring that into the Buddhist tradition, it brings us toward the experience of what we call Vedana, which is the feeling tone of how sensations fall into three categories. Those that are pleasant, which naturally desire more contact. Those which are unpleasant, which initiate pushing away. And then the neutral sensations, which kind of bring in boredom and restlessness. And when you really pay attention to your experience of Vedana, in that same way with Santosh, you will notice how you are constantly reacting to the moment. And you know what it's like. You've been out for a walk, it feels so good to sit down, and then 20 minutes later, oh, I need to move. Or, wow, this ice cream tastes so great. And then 15 minutes later, you're thinking, ugh, I'm kind of grossed out. Things are always changing. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And we're constantly reacting and getting onto that syndrome. And even if you just practice it, maybe we'll close with this for our meditation. Just for a minute, you'll notice how you have a thought you like, you have a thought you don't like, you have a memory you like, you have a memory you don't like. Nothing's happening, you're bored. So in this restlessness, this essential restlessness, what do? I always like to honor Werner Erhard, who said that the quickest way to be happy is to choose what you already have, to choose this moment. And if you'd indulge me for another Zen pop quiz, if you like, you can close your eyes and just take 3 slow breaths, relaxing on the out breath, and if you like, invite your attention to move toward something you're grateful for. And just, it can be any small thing, big thing, an event, a person, an experience. And when you have that in mind, sense if you can call it close, let it get big. If there are visual memories that you can allow to flower, let them flower right now. If there are sounds in this memory, let them be present. And if you can, just recall what it feels like inside. Explore what it feels like inside when you let yourself be saturated with a sense of gratitude. Taking in a long, deep inhalation. Just relax and soften and just sense if you can feel just a little bit more of this sense of appreciation, of gratitude. And you might notice that in this moment, the mind is wanting nothing. If you like, you can deepen your breath. And if you like, you can open your eyes. Gratitude is this stunning practice. It takes us into this profound sense of presence, of yes, the falling away of these 3 poisons is a natural byproduct. As you sense your life less and less caught in desire, what are the qualities? One quality is that you will notice that you are more and more you are liberated from attachments. If you start any activity and abandon any attachment to the outcome, you might find that you have more flow, more intuition, more ease, more aliveness, because you're not doing it for an end result, or you're not attached to the end result. Renouncing the fruits of your actions allows you to be fully awake and present. Another element of a non-desiring mind is a clear mind. A clear mind is not filtered by any distortions. And chances are, when you are free of attachment to the outcome, you will see more clearly into the executive decisions you have to make in your life. You can see more clearly into the subtlety of relationships and what's going on. And ultimately, and we'll talk about this in a moment, you start to see more clearly into the nature of reality itself. Another quality of a non-desiring mind is a sense of fulfillment, more satisfaction, more contentment, more of a capacity to let things be. And along with that comes a greater sense of compassion and a greater sense of altruism. Because here's the thing, desire is often tied inextricably to selfishness. It's about self-preservation. And with limited resources, or the perception of limited resources, your mind is naturally about self-preservation, self-protection, and self-promotion. But without desire, without selfishness, compassion and empathy naturally start to flow. And you'll find yourself in relationship to the world feeling not selfish, but selfless. The word seva, which comes from the Sanskrit, means selfless service. It's selfless compassion, which is a profound state of the heart. So these qualities of being less attached to outcome, having more clarity, more contentment, more access to kind of like selfless compassion are profound states. And inevitably, desires don't stop. They come and go like waves. And quite often they're intermittent. They alternate with aversion. I like this, I don't like this. But with practice, with paying attention, bringing in a little more wisdom, you start to sense the you that's behind the fluctuation of mind. When you are less attached to greed and hatred, or wanting and aversion, you start to become more aware of who you are as the one who's aware of those fluctuations. And this is what points to real freedom. When you look at the characteristics of an awakened person, an enlightened person, if you will, these words kind of pop up. Wisdom, seeing clearly. Compassion, the capacity to empathize with others, to feel what other people are feeling. Equanimity, a quality of steadiness in the midst of turbulence. Selflessness, this falling away of this tightly held sense of I and mine. Altruism, a natural desire to respond to the suffering of those around you. Humility, just a sense of ease, of not wanting anything other than what is, which brings in a quality of joy and a quality of non-attachment. But some people say, well, aren't there healthy desires? And I think it's safe to say there are. Your desire to be helpful to others. Your desire to be awake to the nature of reality. the desire to be of service. These are gradations of desire, and I think it's safe to say they're wholesome desire. But I had shared this story, I believe, in the past when I was doing part of the Johns Hopkins study, high-dose psilocybin on long-term meditators. And at the end of my journey, I remember just saying, it's all about service. It's all about compassion. And just sort of really feeling that. It's all about like being aware of suffering, responding to suffering. Suffering is this huge thing. And then there's this pause. And I just sort of like smacked my forehead and I said, and that's just another story. So this gets a little fine-tuned here because it really brings up this distinction in spiritual practice, which is the distinction between means and self-improvement and liberation. The desire to be better, to be a better meditator, to be a better listener, to be a better partner, to be a more compassionate person, to be more responsive to the suffering around us. Those are all beautiful, beautiful callings. Beautiful callings. Beautiful desires. But enlightenment itself is the extinguishing of hatred and greed and desire. It's not to say don't try to improve yourself, but I think it's to say that what's behind this is this deep desire we each have is to know who we really are. Here's what Eckhart Tolle has to say about this. He says, to know yourself as the being underneath the thinker, the stillness underneath the mental noise, the love and joy underneath the pain, is freedom, salvation, and enlightenment. So the word nirvana or nibbana is thrown around a lot. It's very compelling. It makes for a great story, but what is it? Here's a definition from the Buddhist perspective, that nirvana is a transcendent state in which there is neither suffering, desire, nor sense of self, and the subject is released from the effects of karma and the cycle of death and rebirth. It represents the final goal. So imagine no suffering, no desire, no sense of self, and you are released from the effects of karma. Another shorter definition of nirvana is blowing out. And it's or blowing out or extinguishing. It's like it's the extinguishing of the self. That, I don't know about you, but that's kind of scary to me. As much as I find that really compelling, it's also kind of terrifying. And I've had experiences in my life, and maybe you have as well, where you have experienced that sense of no self. You know, those moments when there's no I, there's no mind, there's no wanting, there's no aversion, there's no confusion. It's just the pure resonance of here and now. We've all experienced that to some point. And it's exhilarating. It feels so good. The question is, how far does that go? Like the true extinguishing of self. My own sense is that we get glimpses. And this practice of self-improvement, if you will, or the practice of means, is about seeing more and more intimately how you are driven and run by judgment, aversion, hatred, ill will. How you are driven by greed, by wanting, by fantasizing, by planning, by grasping, by clinging. And how you are driven by confusion, delusion, believing things that are true when they're not true. This concept of nirvana, or like the fully awakened state, it's interesting and it's kind of juicy, but I think what it does is it brings us back to the here and now, to practicing, to noticing when there's something between you and feeling free, something between you and feeling truly happy, and observing what is that's between you and feeling free. And little by little, or maybe a lot by a lot, we start to encounter those fetters. You start to encounter those small things that are holding you back, the old memories, the experiences from the past that are undigested, your karma, if you will. And part of how we begin to see that we're progressing on the path, and this question was asked to the Buddha, hypothetically or allegedly. Someone said, how do I know I'm improving? And this was his response, which I thought was brilliant. He said, are you more or less caught by greed, hatred, and delusion? It becomes a very interesting measure of the quality of your life and the quality of freedom that you may have. Why don't we close with just a minute or two, a short reflection. If you like, you can close your eyes. Let's take a moment to kind of sense this inner moment-to-moment experience of what we could call Vedana, the arising of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And as you just take 3 slow breaths, you just might sense, is there anything in your experience right now that you would deem as pleasurable? Is there anything in your experience right now that you would deem as unpleasant? And you might discern, even though it's subtle, what feels neutral, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And can you sense who you are as the observer of this play of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral? And who you are as the one who is aware of this built-in impulse to lean toward the pleasant, to push away the unpleasant, and to be restless with the neutral. And can you sense, just for a few moments, who are you right now in the absence of desire? What do you feel and what do you notice? And you might now gently deepen your breath. If you'd like, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for your time and attention. May you and your desires, your delusions, your aversions have a wonderful dance together. I hope you found this helpful. The possibility of freedom is here.